Welcome to Money RX for CRNAs and nurse practitioners. I'm Brett Fellows, certified financial planner. Most CRNAs and nurse practitioners retiring before Medicare think that they have to make a painful trade-off. You either keep income low, so you qualify for ACA subsidies, or do Roth conversions and lose the subsidy. And on paper, it looks true. But today I want to show you something that most financial advisors completely miss. The households who save the most money in retirement usually do both, just not in the same years. And for one CRNA couple I recently modeled, getting this sequence right reduced their lifetime taxes by over $400,000. Not by taking more investment risk, not by working longer, just by changing the order of decision. And before I get going, I want to let everyone know that we are currently accepting new APRN clients here at Oak Capital Advisors for the summer of 2026. Comprehensive financial planning, investment management, and tax planning. Check out our website to book a discovery call with me to learn more. So let me tell you about Renata. She's 60. She was a CRNA at a regional hospital for the last 28 years, and she is retiring this year. She has $1.78 million in her 403B. She has an $80,000 IRA and a small brokerage account. And she has no Roth balance to speak of. And her husband, Ben, is 58. He is a family nurse practitioner, and he plans to keep working for 2 more years. And his clinic covers both of them on health insurance for as long as he's employed. So Renata came into a planning meeting with the question that most nurses in her situation bring. Brett, should I take the ACA subsidy or should I do a Roth conversion? She'd actually spent 6 months reading about it. She saw some YouTube videos on it, and she talked to 2 certified financial planners about it. Every source landed her in the same place. They told her to pick a side. Now, she was leaning towards the subsidy. But what she found out in that meeting was that the question she had been wrestling with for half a year was the wrong question. The cost of asking the wrong question across the next 12 years of her life came out to roughly $280,000. What scared Renata wasn't taxes. It was the feeling that one wrong decision in her early retirement years could permanently damage the next 30 years of her life. She didn't want to go back to work at age 68 because she got this wrong at 60. And honestly, that fear is more common than most nurses admit. Now, Renata's situation isn't unusual. It's the default, and it has 3 specific causes. Let me walk you through all 3. The first mistake is what I'd call the false binary. A Roth conversion raises your MAGI. A higher MAGI reduces your ACA subsidy. On a tax return, those 2 things are in direct conflict. So the template tells you to pick one. You get the conversion or you get the subsidy, but you don't get both. And from 2021 through 2025, that framing was close enough to be right. There was the Inflation Reduction Act that softened this cliff into a smoother phase out. But as of 2026, those enhanced credits have expired, and the hard 400% FPL cliff is back. Now, for a married couple, that cliff sits at roughly $84,000 of income. You go $1 over it, and the full subsidy disappears. So Renata was leaning towards skipping every conversion and chasing the full subsidy in every ACA year. Now, on her $1.78 million pre-tax balance, compounding for the next 13 years before her first RMD, that one decision would in theory add $280,000 of lifetime federal tax to her household. And she got there by doing exactly what every article she'd read told her to do. The hidden penalty is something that most people don't see. Now, we call it the cliff because $1 over it loses everything. And that part's true. What gets missed is that long before Renata reaches that line, the cost of each additional converted dollar already much higher than her federal bracket suggests. So here's the part that almost nobody explains clearly. Losing ACA subsidies doesn't happen like normal taxes. It's more like pulling loose a thread on a sweater. You think that every dollar only affects one extra dollar, but suddenly the whole thing starts to unravel. So a CRNA might say, all right, I'm going to convert $25,000 thinking that I'm still in the 12% tax bracket. So this should be relatively cheap. But what actually happens is that they trigger thousands of dollars of lost healthcare subsidies at the same time. So the real cost isn't 12%. In some years, it could be 40%, 50%, even higher. Every dollar of Maggie in the subsidy phase-out zone raises the share of income the federal government expects you to pay towards your Medicare premiums. And that percentage is recalculated retroactively against every dollar already on the return. And there's a name for what that creates. They call it a shadow tax. So in 2026, back to a married couple in this curve, the shadow tax adds 10 to 19% on top of the federal bracket. So the real marginal rate hits roughly 31% in the band where the federal bracket alone would be 22. And guess what? It doesn't show up on your tax return because the IRS doesn't call it a tax. It's a benefit reduction calculated on a different form. And the household sees it when the marketplace premium for their Medicare notice arrives. So Renata's plan was to convert, let's say, $25,000 in her first ACA year. She thought she was just filling up her 12% bracket. But that conversion would have landed her household right in the worst part of that curve. Federal tax on her conversion would be $5,500. Her subsidies lost for the year about $13,800. So 77 cents of every converted dollar is now gone. There are documented cases of households exceeding the cliff by less than $3,000 and thusly losing $14,000 in subsidies while maybe saving $300 in tax. So net loss in a single year is nearly $14,000. So this is the shape of the curve that nobody is graphing for you. The part almost every calculator misses is the one that turns a 1-year mistake into a 10-year mistake. ACA subsidies and Roth conversions show up on the same tax return. So every article you read, every spreadsheet will model them on the same return because that's the only place that they're visible. But they're not really a 1-year problem. They're two separate levers that play out across a 5 to 7 year runway between your household's last paycheck and the year required minimum distributions begin. So the annual tax return is the reporting unit, but it's that runway, that's the planning unit. And the household keeps getting asked to make a 7-year decision with a 1-year tool. So again, when Renata modeled her situation year by year, the answer kept coming out the same. Skip the conversion, take the subsidy. It's what the binary forces. When the same household was modeled across the full runway, however, showing Ben's employer coverage in years 1 and 2, both of them on ACA in years 3 through 5, then Renata on Medicare, while Ben finished out a short ACA stretch. And then finally, both of them on Medicare from year 8 forward, the answer changed completely. The tool was hiding the answer. 3 problems. 1 binary that wasn't actually binary, 1 cliff that's really a curve, and 1 year of math when the planning unit is 7 years. They look like 3 different mistakes, but they're all the same one. Renata didn't need a sharper answer to Roth or ACA. She needed a different question asked across a different time window. So what changed for her and Ben wasn't picking the smarter side of the argument. It was a calendar. The mistake is treating Roth conversions and ACA subsidies like they happen in the same season of life. They don't. So the households who do this the best use what I call a conversion calendar. It's a 12 to 15 year plan that places conversion dollars and subsidy dollars on different years, so the two levers stop fighting each other on a single tax return and start working together across the runway. There are three things to build it, and any nurse household within 5 years of retirement can do this in the next 90 days if they want it. The first step is to map the runway as one image. What you're really doing here is you're separating your retirement into different tax environments. Some years are incredibly valuable, other years are financially dangerous. And once you can see the timeline, retirement starts feeling less overwhelming. Now, for each year, you'd mark the coverage source for each spouse. Employer coverage, ACA, Medicare. You mark the Medicare eligible birthday. Mark the year RMDs start. And the result is a 12 to 15 year grid where every cell knows what kind of year it is. Most households finish this exercise and immediately see 2 to 3 years that they hadn't realized were different from the rest. The second step, identify the cheap conversion years. These are the years where neither spouse is on ACA. Usually that means the years when one spouse is still on employer coverage or the years the household is on Medicare but hasn't started required minimum distributions yet. In those years, the shadow tax doesn't apply. The ACA cliff isn't in play. The only ceiling is the IRMA tier line. So you convert deliberately and in volume during those years. Step 3, pair ACA years with measured conversions, not zero conversions. So in the years both spouses are on ACA, calculate the room under the cliff line after passive income and capital gains. Convert exactly up to that line, but not above it. Take the full subsidy, bank the subsidy savings, and then use that cash to pay the conversion tax in the cheap conversion years on either side of those ACA years. So the subsidy and the conversion are no longer fighting over the same tax return. They're actually funding each other across different years. So let me show you what this looks like for Renata and Ben across the next 13 years. In years 1 and 2, Renata is 60 to 62. Ben is still working at the clinic, and his employer coverage includes her. So there's no ACA, there's no shadow tax, there's no cliff in play. So they're able to convert about $90,000 a year through the 12% federal bracket. The conversion tax comes out of Ben's salary. Years 3 through 5, both of them are retired, both of them are on the ACA. They convert about $20,000 a year, calibrated to land just under the cliff line. They take roughly $13,000 a year of premium tax credits. The subsidy savings gets banked. Years 6 through 9, Renata is on Medicare. Ben finishes a short ACA stretch and then joins her on Medicare. They convert about $80,000 a year through the 22% bracket. So IRMA stays in Tier 1. The conversion tax is paid out of the subsidy cash that they banked in years 3 through 5. Year 10 forward, both of them are on Medicare. The pre-tax balance of her account has dropped from $1.78 million to roughly $700,000. So when required distributions begin at age 73, the first year RMD is around $30,000. This is below the IRMA tier line, well below the bracket where Social Security taxation accelerates. Across the full 25-year retirement, this household pays approximately $420,000 less in lifetime federal taxes than the binary skip the conversion answer that would have produced more. So it captures roughly $45,000 in actual ACA subsidies along the way, and it pays roughly $8,000 in IRMA across the early Medicare years. So the headline isn't the $420,000. The headline is that in every year of the runway, this household chose deliberately which lever to pull instead of being told that there was only one. 3 things to carry out of this episode. The cost isn't picking the wrong side. It's accepting that there were only 2 sides. The cliff isn't a cliff. It's a curve. Plan around the curve, not the line. And the runway is a calendar, not a tax return. The calendar is your answer. Most CRNAs and NPs approaching retirement are trying to optimize a single tax return. But the families who create real flexibilities optimize an entire decade. That's the difference. Not better investments, better sequencing. If you want help building your own conversion calendar, mapping out ACA years, Roth conversion years, Medicare transitions, and future RMD exposure, you can schedule a conversation with me at Oak Capital Advisors in the link below. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next week.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. This podcast does not engage in rendering legal, financial, or other professional services.